All right, welcome to I.A.M.'s third webinar, and we have a special guest. His name is Stephen. He will be presenting to us today. And if you do not know me, my name is Alicia Moore. I am the owner of Clinical Science Research Solutions, and I'm also the founder of I.A.M. Research and Wellness Foundation. I created the business because in this area, we don't have any clinical research of anything, infrastructure. So that's what we have now. But in order to educate the community, we have decided to start implementing educational webinars, such as Stephen coming in here and having guest speakers like himself to educate us on how to implement a better system as far as clinical trials and getting patients into clinical trials and just educating the community as a whole. So I will stop talking, and without further ado, Stephen, if you want to start, and I'll let you have the floor.
Great. Now, thank you, Alicia. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, before I get into the 5 questions, let me just tell you why I'm the right person to give them to you. So, I'm not a researcher, an AI researcher. I'm not a data scientist, but I've spent 20 years inside of clinical and regulated operations at companies like Takeda, Biogen, Archer-Daniels Midlands, and American Airlines. I've been in the room when the FDA inspector asks those questions. And I've watched coordinators spend entire days reconstructing decisions because there was no audit trail. So I built NexTrial because I couldn't find a tool that actually worked in a regulated environment. And today's not about NexTrial, right? Today is about giving you the vocabulary to protect yourself before you make a decision that could define the next 5 years of your site and your clinical site. So 5 questions. That's what you're leaving here today with. So let's go. Let me switch the slide there. So, well, go to the next one. Yep. So again, I want to be honest from the start, right? I've sat on both sides of this. I've been the person in the inside of a pharma company watching capable physicians get stopped at the starting line, not because they lacked patience, not because they lacked the motivation, because there was no infrastructure or way that wasn't there to safely enable them to perform a clinical trial. So there's a regulatory maze, there's paperwork, there's 90 to 120 days of waiting before you can see your first patient. And that's not a technology problem, that's an infrastructure problem. So, but here's what I've learned is the solution isn't digitizing the maze, it's deleting it. And and to do that, you need to understand what tools actually belong in the regulated environment. And most people in the space right now, they don't have that vocabulary yet. So let's change that today. So 97% is, let that number kind of sit for a second. So 97% of the physicians in the United States have never led a clinical trial. And that's not because they don't want to. That's not because their patients, don't need access to research. It's because no one built that infrastructure to let them in. If you're in this room and you're watching this, this recording, you're trying to change that number. So you're building a site, you're training your coordinators, you're doing the hard work of creating the infrastructure that gets physicians into research for the first time. And that makes you part of something historic. So here's where it gets complicated, is that because right now, your inbox is probably full of people who want to sell you tools that could help you or hurt you. And you need to know how to tell the difference, right? And that's what we're going to fix here. is, your inbox. Look at these 3 emails, right? You've seen versions of them, I'm sure, right? Everyone's promising to streamline your operations, automate your workflows, revolutionize your trial management. But here's the thing. Some of these tools are genuinely useful, right? I'm not anti-AI. I build an AI company. But some of them are genuinely dangerous. And the dangerous ones don't announce themselves, right? They look exactly like the good ones, the helpful ones. So the question isn't, is this AI? The question is, what kind of AI is it? And to answer that, you have 5 questions. And before I give you those questions, I need to give you some pieces of vocabulary, because without it, the questions won't land the way they need to. So this table, boom, right? This table is the most important thing I'm going to show you today. It is, look at the left column, that's what the vendors say in their sales decks, right? Faster enrollment, smarter matching, automated compliance. And that language is optimized to get a meeting, to schedule, to get a contract signed, right? But now look on the right column. This is what the FDA says during an inspection. Show me the audit trail, explain this decision, and who's accountable, right? These are 2 completely different languages. And if the tool you bought can only speak to the left side, but can't answer the right, you don't have a software problem. You have a compliance problem. And the compliance problem has your name on it. Because the inspector comes, the vendor is not going to be in the room. You are. Okay, so I want you to remember this, right? This sentence, right? Not all AI is created equal. The AI that recommends what to watch on Netflix is called pattern matching, right? It looks at what you've watched before and guesses what you're going to like next. And if it's wrong, you watch the bad movie for 20 minutes and you move on, right? That AI, the AI that helps determine whether a patient is eligible for a clinical trial, that cannot work the same way. Because if that AI is wrong, a patient might receive a treatment that they shouldn't, or miss a treatment that it could have saved their life. So this distinction is what most AI vendors selling into clinical research don't want you to think about, because the kind of AI that works for Netflix is cheap, fast, and easy to build, and the kind that survives an FDA audit is not. And let me show you what that looks like. So consumer grade, 2 columns. This is the vocabulary you came for, right? Consumer grade AI is probabilistic, right? What that means is same question, different answer, depending on when you ask it, how you phrase it, what data happens to be loaded at the time you ask the question. And again, that's fine for Netflix, but it's not fine for a consent form decision or a patient eligibility flag. So regulatory grade AI is deterministic, right? Which means that the same input is always going to give you the same output. It's always, every single time. Every decision it makes will be tracked and can be tracked back to a specific rule, a specific data point, a specific regulatory clause, right? One survives Netflix, the other one survives the FDA. So again, that's the first vocabulary word you should take home with, is deterministic versus probabilistic. So when you sit across from an AI vendor, that should be your first question, is you say, if I run the same patient data through your system tomorrow, will I get the exact same result? And can you show me why? And then again, watch what happens next, right? They will, the answer will tell you everything. So, right. So that's the first vocabulary word. Second one here is, the problem is an AI, right? The FDA audit room is I am not anti-AI, building that AI company. I believe AI will transform clinical research in ways we can't even fully imagine yet. But here's what 20 years in a regulated environments have taught me is that people building most of these tools have never been in the room with an FDA inspector asks those questions, right? They've never had to explain to an IRB why a consent form was modified. They never watched a coordinator spend 8 hours reconstructing a decision because there was no audit trail, right? They're building based on what works in Silicon Valley. Move fast, iterate, and ship. And in clinical research, the thing you ship has to be right, not 90% right, not we'll fix it in the next update. Right, right, right. So the problem isn't AI. The problem is AI built by people who've never faced an FDA audit. And that's the problem I'm going to here to help you solve. So patients, I want to show you this one, right? Patients are trajectories, they're not snapshots. So something that changed the way I think about patient matching, and it'll change the way you evaluate any AI tool that claims to do it, right? Look at the left side, right? Snapshot AI sees a single data point, right? Current A1C is 8.3. So the protocol requires below 8. So that person is not eligible, case closed. But look on the right side, trajectory. The trajectory AI sees the same patient, but over time, it says A1C was 9.1 6 months ago, then 8.8, then 8.5, now it's 8.3. The patient is, that's not a patient who doesn't qualify. That's just a patient who is trending towards eligibility in 6 weeks. So they may not be exactly who you're looking for today, but in 6 weeks, and the snapshot-based system will lose that patient. And a trajectory-based system flags them and says, this patient may be eligible in 6 weeks. Here is the data. The physician should make the call, right? Human in the lead, not human in the loop, human in the lead. So notice what I said. The physician should make that call. The AI surfaces the insight and the human makes the judgment. And that principle matters, right? So hold on to that. We're going to come back to that. This is the ethical boundary. So this is the single most important principle in responsible AI for clinical research. Again, left column. AI is extraordinary at these things. It can read a 200-page protocol in seconds, flag every eligibility criterion. It can compare a patient's lab values against the trial requirements across 50 studies simultaneously. And it's genuinely, useful. So, well, look at the right column. The right column is judge, decide, consent, and explain. AI should never be doing these things. That's not a technology limitation. That's an ethical boundary. So when you look at a patient in the eye and you say, you're eligible for this trial or you're not eligible for this trial, someone has to be accountable for that decision. And that someone has to be a human. So any vendor who tells you their tool automates eligibility decisions, that's a red flag, right? Not because technology can't do it, but because in regulated clinical research, it shouldn't. So again, write that one down if you need to. It's a permission beat. You're telling them this matters enough to capture, right? So judge, decide, consent, explain. And then the audit trail. So 21 CFR Part 11. In clinical research, everything must be documented, right? Every decision, every change, every version of every document, this isn't optional, it's federal law. So if your AI tool generates a document, modifies a consent form, or makes a recommendation about a patient, there must be a trail showing exactly what happened, when, and why. And here's the test I want you to run on any AI vendor. Ask them to show you the audit trail for a specific AI prediction, not a screenshot, not a summary, the actual audit trail. What data went in, what logic was applied, and what was the output came out. If they can walk you through that in 60 seconds, good sign. If they show you a dashboard with a pie chart and say our analytics demonstrates high accuracy, that tool will not survive an FDA inspection. And if it's on your site when the inspector comes in, you own the problem, not them. So keep that test in your back pocket. You're going to need that one. And I want to talk directly to the coordinators in the room. Your slide. Because you're the people who actually hold all this together. It's I've watched coordinators spend entire days working, doing a good work with that good technology could be doing in minutes, right? Reformatting consent forms, cross-checking eligibility criteria against lab values, preparing regulatory binders for monitoring visits. At 5 p.m., still working on Friday, right? The right AI, takes that burden down. 10 hours of paperwork becomes 2. Pre-populated regulatory packages, automated version mismatches, flags, right? One dashboard showing where every study stands. The right AI will protect you. The wrong AI gives you another system to manage, another login, another set of outputs you have to double check because you don't trust them, another potential error you'll have to explain to the IRB. The wrong AI will expose you, and you deserve to know the difference. In about 10 minutes, I'll show you. So 21 CFR Part 50. Every patient must receive the current IRB version of the informed consent form. If a patient signs an outdated version, even if the consent is identical, that's a protocol deviation at scale that can shut down your entire site. So now imagine if you're using an AI tool to generate consent forms, great, right? It pulls language from your protocol, it formats it, it produces the form. But here's really the question is, when the IRB requires a modification, does your AI track which patients signed which versions? And does it flag when a coordinator is about to use the wrong version? Does it maintain an unbroken chain of custody from generation to signature? So again, look at the version control timeline from V1, version 1 through version 2.1. Every change is tracked, every timestamp is captured, and every user is attributed, right? So if your AI can't show this, it's not reducing your risk, it's creating it. So ask the question, right? Does it version control your documents? And 1 in 4. So for those of you building sites or thinking about building a clinical research network or site, I want you to understand what's actually at stake, because it's not just about passing one submission. 1 in 4 IRB, Internal Review Board submissions, requires revisions before approval. And that's a national average, right? 1 in 4. And here's what most people don't realize is that the majority of those revisions aren't about the science, right? They're mostly all about documentation. Missing elements in a consent form, an outdated protocol reference, a version mismatch that a coordinator didn't catch at 5 p.m. on Friday, right? These are all preventable errors. The kind of errors that the right technology eliminates before you ever hit the submit button. So the immediate impact is a 30-day delay, painful but survivable. But the cascade is what will kill you. Is that 30-day delay means your sponsor starts to lose confidence. The next time they're selecting a site for a trial, they'll remember your site doesn't get the call, right? That's revenue you'll never see. And that's a new network trying to establish credibility, right? The one rejection can set you back a whole year. So the terminology decisions you make today, the technology decisions you make today, whether your AI produces submission-ready documentation or creates new errors, right? This determines which side of the cascade you're going to be on. And that's why the next 10 minutes matter. So I want to show you a map that no one else in the space is showing you because it's not flattering to most vendors. So you're going to hear names like Gemini and ChatGPT and Claude, large language models that are being adapted for healthcare, right? And here's what I want you to understand is a powerful AI model is not the same thing as a regulatory grade clinical research tool, right? A model is just an engine. And what matters is what's built around that engine. The audit trails, the version control, and those deterministic outputs, right? The compliance architecture. Some vendors are building on these models responsibly, and others, are wrapping a healthcare skin around a ChatGPT and calling it clinical grade. So again, the 5 questions I'm about to give you will tell you which is which. So again, bottom left, generic AI assistants, incredibly powerful for writing emails, summarizing documents, brainstorming, meeting notes, all of those. Not designed for regulated clinical research. No audit trail, no GXP compliance. Bottom right is tools built for clinical research, but without compliance backbone. So they have features. They just can't prove to an auditor how they made their decisions and predictions. So top left is enterprise tools, right? Strong regulatory infrastructure, but not purpose-built for clinical research. So your EHR, your electronic health record system, a general compliance platform. And then top right, this is where you want to be. Regulatory grade, purpose-built. This is the quadrant with the fewest options because building here is hard. It requires understanding both the AI and the regulations. And most vendors pick one or the other. So now I'm going to give you those 5 questions regardless. So again, how do you tell the difference? Right, giving you the problem. I've shown you why it matters. Now we'll give you those tools, those 5 questions, and that's it. Ask any AI vendor selling into clinical research should be able to answer all 5 clearly, specifically, without hesitation. And if they can't, or if they dodge, that tells you everything you need to know. Screenshot the slide, print it, bring it to your vendor meetings. So let's go through this one. 5 questions. I'm going to walk through each one and what it means, what a good answer sounds like, and what a red flag sounds like. So by the time we're done, you'll have a filter that most site directors, most principal investigators, most clinical operation leaders don't have yet. So that's not a small thing. The AI market is moving so fast and vendors are everywhere, and the pressure to adopt before you've asked the right questions is real. So they put down these decisions back in your hand. You want to put these back in your hands. And again, these aren't questions that I invented, right? These are the questions the FDA inspectors and the IRB reviewers are already asking, just in regulatory language. All I've done is kind of translate them into 5 sentences that you can bring to a vendor meeting. And if a vendor can answer all 5 clearly, they've earned the next conversation. If they can't, then you've saved yourself a year of problems. So again, you've already know this from the vocabulary earlier, right? Deterministic means same input, same output every time. The logic is fixed. The trail is clear. You can reproduce any result months or years later and get the exact identical answer. This is really important. Probabilistic means that the answer can change depending on when you ask, how you phrase it, what data happens to be loaded into the model at that time. So, and here's how you ask that in plain language in a vendor meeting. If I run the same patient data through your system tomorrow, will I get the exact same result? If the answer says yes, absolutely, here's the logic trail, good sign. If the answer is well, our model is continuously learning and improving, that's a red flag, right? Continuous learning means the system changes its answers over time. And in a regulated environment, you need to reproduce the results months or sometimes even years later. If you, so months or years later. It's a continuous learning model cannot do that. So they might say our model is 95% accurate, but here's what you say back. I don't need 95% accuracy. I need 100% explainable. Show me the logic trail for every output. So, and then watch what happens next. Boom. Question 2. So imagine this scenario. Your AI tool helped you prepare for an IRB submission. And during review, an IRB member asks, why was this patient flagged as eligible? So you cannot say the AI said so, right? That's not an answer that survives regulatory scrutiny. That is not an answer that survives any scrutiny. So what you need to be able to say is the system identified A1C 7.6 documented on January 15th within the required range of 6.5 to 8.0 per protocol criterion 4.2.1. This is what you need to be able to say for an eligible patient. What the level of specificity that's what's explainable, right? It means in a regulated environment, specificity is that if an AI can't give you that chain of thought reasoning, you can't give it to an IRB, right? And if you can't give it to an IRB, you're taking on personal accountability like you're doing it manually anyway. So for a decision, you cannot explain. So that's not a position you want to be in. So question 2, can I explain this decision to my IRB? Ask it. If they hedge, then you have your answer. So that's question 2. Question 3. This one is specifically for the coordinators, right? Version control means the systems track every change to every document, who made the change, when, why. It means you always know which version is current. It means a coordinator cannot accidentally use an outdated consent form because the system will not let them. So look at the timeline. Again, version 1 through 2.1, every change tracked, every timestamp captured, every user attributed, right? Same as before. Here's how you ask this in a vendor meeting. If my principal investigator makes a change to the protocol summary and the IRB requires a modification to the consent form, does your system automatically flag the version mismatch? And can I see a complete history of that change? Sounds basic, right? And you'd be surprised how many AI tools generate documents without tracking any of this. So they create the document, hand it to you, walk away. In a regulated environment, that's not a tool, that's a liability. So every change tracked, time-stamped, and attributed. This is question 4 is this is the deal breaker, right? Not being dramatic. This is the question that will save your site or cost you everything. An audit trail is the complete tamper-proof record of every action the system takes. Not a log file, not a summary report, but a chain of evidence, right? Input data, logic applied, output produced, and who triggered it and when. And here's the exact request I want you to make in your next vendor meeting, right? Same thing. You say, show me the audit trail for a single AI decision. Walk me through it. And if they can show you the entire chain in under 60 seconds, good sign. If they show you that dashboard or analytics and say demonstrates higher accuracy, it's not an audit trail. So that won't survive FDA inspection. You'll still need to have all your manual controls in place. And if that tool is on your site, when the inspector comes in, that is your problem. So where is the audit trail? 4 words. Ask them every single time. Question 5, the ultimate test. So this one is, you don't actually ask the vendor, you ask yourself. Because no vendor will tell you their tool creates risk. So after you've gone through questions 1 through 4, sit back, sit with those answers, and ask yourself this. What happens when an FDA inspector asks about this tool? If your answer is, I'd be proud to show them exactly how we use it, buy it, right? If your answer is, I'd be nervous about that conversation, don't buy it. It's really that simple. The fact that you now have these 5 questions puts you ahead of 90% of the clinical research sites being pitched AI tools right now. So most people are buying based on demos, based on features, based on promises. You're going to be buying based on these 5 questions. And that's the difference between a site that builds right and a site that has to rebuild later. So this one, take a moment. This one is you can screenshot this one. 5 questions, good answers, red flag, good, 5 questions, good answers, red flags. That's all you need. So is it deterministic? Same input, same output every time? If they say our model continuously learns, red flag. Can I explain this to my IRB? Here's the exact regulatory clause and data trail. If they say proprietary algorithms, red flag. Does your version control, does it version control documents? Every change tracked, timestamp attributed. If they say you manage the versions, red flag. Where's the audit trail? Walk you through it in 60 seconds. If they show you some analytics dashboard, red flag. When will this hurt or help you in an FDA inspection designed for 21 CFR Part 11? If they say working on compliance features, red flag. Right? These questions cost you nothing. They may take 5 minutes, and they will save you from a decision that could define the next decade of your career. So again, bring this to every meeting, And I want to be honest, right? In the industry, there's no FDA pre-approved process for AI tools used in clinical operations. The FDA doesn't certify your CTMS platform. They don't certify your EDC platform. They don't certify your AI copilots. But what they do is they evaluate whether your processes and your records meet the requirements of 21 CFR Part 11. Electronic records, electronic signatures, audit trails, data integrity. And those requirements have been in place since 1997. They haven't changed because AI arrived. So, you know, the question isn't, has the FDA approved a deterministic AI? The question is, does your AI produce records that meet the standards the FDA has always required? Audit trails, reproducibility, explainability, and version control. And that's why deterministic, that's why we build deterministic, right? It's not because a regulator told us to. It's because when a regulator asks, and they will ask, we want our customers to have the answer that it takes 60 seconds, not 6 months of remediation. So the regulatory bodies are catching up to the AI in healthcare, and they're doing it broadly. But the compliance standards your AI needs to meet, those already exist, and they've existed for almost 30 years. And we're just need to build to them, right? So one more thing. This is where specifically, again, for the coordinators, technology decisions at the research sites are usually made by the principal investigator or the site director. But the person who will use the tool every single day, the person whose workflow it will either improve or destroy, is you, the coordinator. So you know what version control means because you've lived it. You know what an audit trail means because you've had to reproduce it during a monitoring visit, right? You know whether a tool actually saves time or whether it just moves the work from one place to another. So if your site is evaluating AI tools and you're not in the room, speak up. You can ask to be there and bring those 5 questions, because the person who should be evaluating whether a tool works in clinical research is the person who actually does the clinical research, and that's you. So 3%. Remember that number from the beginning. 93%, right? 97% of the physicians in the country have never participated in clinical research as an investigator. Not because they can't, because their patients, not because their patients don't need it, but again, the infrastructure to get started doesn't exist in their world. So think about what that means. Think about the communities that are underrepresented in clinical research and trials, not because, again, patients don't exist. They're there because there's no trial sites in their neighborhoods, right? No research infrastructure in their clinics. No one is offering them a chance to participate. Every physician who wants to do research and can't, this is the infrastructure problem you are building to solve. And what you choose to build on, whether it's a regulatory grade infrastructure or the wrong kind of AI, determines whether you're actually going to solve that problem or you're creating a new version of the same problem. So this is where your building connects to something bigger than any one specific trial or any one technology decision. Every site you build in a community that has never had access to clinical research, you're not just creating a business, you're creating access. You're giving patients options they've never had. You're giving those physicians a path into clinical research that they've never been offered. And when you build that site right, with the right technology, the right compliance, the right infrastructure that enables the right training, you become the kind of site that a sponsor trusts. And that gets the second trial and the third trial. And that becomes a network. So you are the infrastructure, not the AI vendor, not the dashboard company, not the platform promising 80% faster enrollment, right? You. So the infrastructure is built right, it lasts. So we built this because no tool passed all 5 questions. So, you know, you've just spent the last 30 minutes learning those 5 questions, framework for evaluating AI and clinical research. And, the honest answer is to what happens when you apply those questions to everything on the market right now is that few tools pass all 5. And that's why we built Selena, not because we thought clinical research needed more software, but because we couldn't find a single tool that was deterministic by architecture, explainable by design, and audit ready by default. So all 3 at the same time built specifically for trial activation. So we built it ourselves. And Selena is our trial activation intelligence, not a dashboard, not a chatbot. She's the orchestration layer that makes first patient in feel inevitable, not uncertain. And I've been in the room with when the FDA inspector asked that question, and Selena is built for that room. So if you want to learn more, there's a website. No pressure. Today is about giving you that foundation. But if we've talked about today resonated, then I'd love to continue that conversation. And 2 more slides here. So again, we'll send this out. You'll be able to download the cheat sheet. 3 things before I take any questions is really, again, first the checklist, put together a 1-page version of the 5 questions with additional guidance on what to look for in vendor contracts, specifically for clinical research. It's free, no email gate, none of that funnel stuff, right? No follow-up sequence, just a download, and you bring it to your next meeting. Second, if you're going to the CSRS Summit in March, I'll be there with Alicia, and we're going deeper into that technology-enabled site network actually looks in practice. If today's conversation resonated, there's more coming. And then third, if you have any specific questions about a tool you're currently evaluating or a situation you're navigating right now, come find me afterward. I'd rather help you make a good decision than have you make a costly one. So that's it. So yeah, AI market's moving fast. The pressure is to adopt real. Vendors will tell you, that if you don't move now, you'll fall behind. So the sites that aren't the ones that move the fastest are the ones that are built right. So, and you have the time to make those good decisions. So again, thank you. I'd love to take any questions.
That was an excellent presentation, Stephen. I learned a lot, and the thing about you touched on a few points that really hits home with me as far as building the sites right, being FDA ready, sponsor ready, and approved by sponsors. I am very adamant about doing it the right way and not cutting corners. I do have a lot of vendors, tech vendors that approach me that have AI tools, and I'm not in a big hurry to say yes because I need to know, like, will I be able with can this tech AI will it be able to pass FDA inspections? I mean, sponsor inspections, and that's really huge because if not, you're wasting your time as a site owner, as a principal investigator, a study coordinator, just using those tools because it's not going to help you in the near future. You could, it could cost you revenue and your reputation on top of that because you're going to be seen as a site that's not, dependent on reliable tools that's following the regulations that have been set before us years prior. So I don't have any questions. As I said, I think this is really good. I do want to make one note. We might be pushing back our summit into May. I'm not really sure yet, so we can better prepare for the summit. But yes, we will be having the CSRS summit. And then whenever we get those details squared away, we're going to let everybody know and start doing the promos for it. But again, thank you, Stephen. So I'm going to check the chat and see if we have any questions. Um, no questions so far. if you'd like to come off mute, you can to ask questions or maybe make a comment if you're comfortable doing so. I mean, I get on camera a lot. Some people are not, they're camera shy, which is okay.
Yeah, and I'll
Anybody.
send you, and I
Go
can
ahead.
send you over. Yeah, we've got the presentation with the cheat sheet, and then also we also have an appendix section which kind of gives you a high level summary of all of those regulations that for the United States. So
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
these,
And also for anyone that was not able to attend this webinar, we do have a new YouTube channel for I.A.M. Very new. We are uploading all the webinars onto our YouTube channel. So I'll get with my marketing team and what we've done for the month of February. I'll make sure those emails get sent out so we can direct people to the YouTube channel to watch all these webinars. But this is excellent. And also, if anyone that's on this webinar, if you would like to either join us as far as being a guest speaker, please reach out to IM4Health at .org. And if we are LinkedIn friends, you can also message me there as well. But any questions for Stephen? He delivered an excellent, excellent presentation.
thank you.
I'm seeing emojis popping up, some hearts, some clapping hands. I saw yours. But yeah. Um, If there are not any questions, then I will end the, oh, hold on, we have a comment here. It was incredible, an honor to participate. I can agree with you. Is it Grazilia? Please make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly because I feel like I just butchered it.
Awesome. All right. Well, 45 minutes. Perfect. Thanks,
On time.
Alicia.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we will stop the recording now. So